Hello everyone, I'm back. I am so sorry it took this long for me to make another video. I've been super busy. I've been having to get college stuff worked out. I got a new job. Um and I have like a couple other channels that I've been working on, but I promise next time if I do take this long of a break, I will update you. Anyways, let's get right back into it. So if you recall, I have been reading instructions for dancing. That's been going well. I haven't, I'm almost done with it, actually. I'm not going to say that. Now, if you guys remember, I've been reading instructions for dancing, and this might be a little bit of a shorter video, just because a lot of the notes in here are the same patterns, and I'm just going to talk about mainly one at a time that happens throughout the story. So let's get right into that real quick. So the main characters are Evie, and X. And we learned very early on about Evie, actually, and we learned that her parents had a divorce because he cheated on her. And we also learned that Evie walked in on it happening. And that was a really hard moment for her, as it would be for anyone. And we also see in her household that Evie's mom is fully aware of everything that happened, but Evie's sister is not aware of it. And her mom's just pretending like it didn't happen and that everything's okay. And her sister genuinely doesn't know that anything went wrong. She just thinks that they weren't the right fit for each other in the end. And because Evie saw what her father did, it's affecting her more than it is maybe the rest of the family. And she uses this line. There's this line that Evie uses in chapter 3, and it says, "I'm the only one in this house who's learned the lesson of a divorce." And that idea gets me thinking that it wasn't only the fact that her father cheated, it's the fact that her parents were together for so long, and he did that, and then they got divorced. And it gives her this feeling that her world has crumbled down in front of her, and that she can't forgive her dad, and she can't be in this house or be with her mom the same way that she used to be, because everything is changed now. So with this being said, we kind of learn a little bit about Evie and her personality and the way she's giving away all these old love story books that she used to love because of the situation that she was put in, and because that changed her opinion on love and romance and anything in between. And then the visions start happening after she donates these books. So it took her a while to figure out what happens with these visions and how they start, but eventually we learn that whenever a couple who is in love kisses, she gets to see their entire relationship from very beginning in first meeting to the very end, and how their relationship ends, whether it's breakup, death, or something else. There's this one quote that she says after she gets a vision or something like that, and she says, "Given enough time, all love stories turn into heartbreak stories." And I found that quote really interesting for a few reasons. My first reason is that it's not entirely untrue. Eventually, you'll end in some sort of heartache, whether it's good or bad, it will still end that way. Whether it's death, whether it's them having to leave, whether it's breakup, it doesn't matter what it is. However, my second point is that doesn't mean you should stop living in the present, and we're going to find that she learns that later on as well. The moments you shared with this person, no matter how it ends, is always special and is always important, especially to your growth and the other person's growth. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm a strong believer in people come into your lives for a reason, whether it's to teach you something, teach you what you want or don't want. There's always a reason for something happening. And we also see another quote later on where she finds out that her dad's getting married to someone else, and she realizes that someone else's heartbreak and someone else's ending is another person's happiness and beginning. And we see over time, by the time we get to chapter 32 or so, she's beginning to be more lenient with her dad. She's willing to go out with him, talk with him, and spend time with him, and maybe try not to be mad at him, starting to begin to forgive him. And the thing is that the forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for yourself. So you can let go of whatever stressor and whatever anger that you have within yourself that's maybe pushing you down and changing who you are and who you want to be. Forgiveness is allowing yourself to let that go, even if it might still hurt. Forgiveness does not mean that it stops hurting or that the pain just disappears or what happened doesn't exist anymore. It just means letting it go and not letting it take over your life anymore. All right, in chapter 9, page 44, we see her meeting X. It's kind of an awkward meet cute, but it's still one nonetheless, where she really sees how cute he is and how attracted she is to him, but she refuses to want to get close or attached. But then they get dragged into this dance competition where he is her partner, and she's kind of forced to have some sort of relationship with him in order for this competition to go well. Eventually, Fifi, their dance instructor, tells them that they have to get to know each other and they have to get better chemistry in order for these dances to feel eventually their dance instructor Fifi tells them that they need to have more chemistry and they need to get to know each other better in order for this dance to connect with people and themselves. And there's a moment where she's really confused by X and why he says yes to everything, and it kind of annoys her, honestly, but I think that's just because she doesn't understand it. Soon he explains that he says yes to everything because his best friend died, and in a way, he's living for the both of them. He's following his dreams because of that as well. In a way, that happening helped X grow as a person and helped him to see the world differently. He knows tomorrow isn't promised because of everything that happened with his friend. So he wants to live every single day to the fullest, and by doing that, he says yes to everything so that he can experience everything. And that's also why he wants to follow his dreams, much to his dad's dismay. And he didn't finish high school either. In a way, X and Yvette are total opposite. She's more reserved and is scared to do certain things, especially when it comes to relationships, while X is over there saying yes to everything and pursuing his dreams. But he's moving a little too fast and she's not really moving at all. And throughout all this time of them getting to know each other and connecting with each other and sharing their experiences, they begin to like each other. I think X has liked her since the moment he met her, but she's more reserved and he's willing to tell her everything. During this bonfire scene, there's this one quote that I really love on page 119. And she says, "For some reason, I want to leave my mark." And she's referring to leaving her mark in the sand, but I think it means a little bit more than that. I think everyone wants to leave their mark on the world in some way, but as we mentioned in Fault in Our Stars, it doesn't need to be this grand gesture that everyone has to know about. You can leave your mark on one or two people and it would still be a mark on the world. When I've thought of these as well, I always think about P.T. Barnum in The Greatest Showman, where his wife says you don't need everyone to love you, just a few good people. And I feel like that would really work with these as well, because especially with Augustus Waters, who wanted to be a grand hero in the world and leave a crater in the earth, metaphorically, he doesn't need to do that in order to be remembered. His story may be passed down from Hazel, or his parents are going to remember him, and whoever else he had made an impact on. And while, yes, in this scene, Evie was talking about leaving her mark in the sand, I think it still applies to her in a mental state as well. Also, forgot to mention earlier with the visions, we see that Evie only told one person about her visions. We see that Evie only tells one person about her visions, and that's Martin. She trusted Martin to be open-minded enough and to not call her crazy for enough for her to tell him about these visions. And yeah. And he's also helping her figure these out and work everything out. Especially when she saw Cassidy and Sophie. Those are her other two best friends, and she found out that they were dating, and she saw them kiss. And she saw how it was going to end for not only the two of them, but for their entire friend group. And that honestly scared her, and she kind of ended their friendship because she was scared. Over time, well, a couple chapters later in chapter 33, we see X kind of convince her that she should make up with Sophie and Cassidy because he would give anything for another moment with his best friend who died. And he doesn't want her to regret the time that they would have together, even if it is going to end. And I think that can also correlate with her relationship with her dad, even though it's a little more complicated. Yes, her dad made a mistake, and yes, it's a mistake no one should make. And that you had a full choice in doing, so it's not really a mistake or an accident. And I don't know. Anyways, the point X is trying to make is that, again, tomorrow's not promised, but you should live in the present and not miss the moments that you can have with these people, because when it's gone and it's over, it's over. You can't get those moments back. You only have the memories left, so you should get as many as you can. And at this point, Evie is starting to open up a bit more to X, and they're dating now. And though they're going maybe like slow, and he's understanding of that, she realizes that she is falling in love with him, and that she is scared, but at the same time, she has hope now, and she's not focusing on the bad like she used to, and she's trying to live in the present. Eventually, she talks to Sophie and Cassidy, and they forgive her, and now she has a community again, which I will constantly remind is very important to have a community or a group of people that you can talk to and hang out with and rely on. After a while, she has less visions, but that's because she knows how to avoid them. But she accidentally sees one. And this one is of X's parents, which we had met earlier in the book, just hadn't learned that much about them, besides that they're happily married and they have been married for a while now. And that they opened this dance studio together. So she sees them kiss, and she sees the first moment they meet, she sees the rest of their love story right to the very end that hasn't happened yet. And that's where they're both lying in bed together, and it's implied how the story ends. And afterwards, she realizes that not all stories end in total heartbreak. They, assumingly, died together in their bed. And they didn't seem hurt. They didn't seem in pain. They knew they lived their life to the fullest, just like X wants to. And yeah, actually, disregard. Those aren't X's parents. Those are his grandparents. They're related to him in some way, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember right now. I didn't have enough time to finish filming this on the previous day, so I'm finishing it now. But where were we? The most important thing to note in the next chapter, chapter 46, is that Evie admits that she's actually in love with Xavier X. That one's a pretty short chapter. It's only 2 pages. But then we go on to the next one, which is the morning of the ball. Or the dance competition, actually. I guess it's something ball, I think. It's dance ball Saturday. We do get a little moment with Evie and her sister Danica? Danny? We'll just call her Danny. And it's where Danny is doing Evie's makeup. And they said they used to do that all the time, but now, as you know, after her dad, finding out about her dad, and after, I guess, growing out of it, they just don't really do that together anymore or do anything together. And we can see in Evie that she kind of misses that connection that she used to have with her sister. And in a way that's kind of symbolic of her entire family as well. She misses the relationship she had with her whole family, with her dad, with her mom. Everything has changed now, and family dynamics have also changed because of everything that happened and everything she discovered. Throughout this chapter, we see them, X and Evie, dancing as they're supposed to be in the competition. And they talk a lot about how nervous they are at the beginning of these dances, and then how they get more comfortable as it goes on, or as they get to the last dance. Like, they're more nervous in the first one than they are in the last. And that is pretty normal for stage performance, especially where the first song is just like the adrenaline, the anxiousness, and the inner thoughts, I guess. But then as you get through to the last dance and you start getting lost in it in a way, lost in the dance, lost in the music, the performance. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's my cat meowing very loudly. No. Anyways, yeah. That's the point of that scene, basically. And it kind of is resembling a relationship as well, how nervous you're at the beginning, and then the more comfortable, or as the time goes on, you get more comfortable with the person and with maybe who you even are with them. And then we see a moment before the dance ball finals, where X is just standing outside of the building, and she sees him, and he kind of looks lost in thought. And he explains to her that he talked to his dad about going back to school, and his dad was so excited. He was thrilled and overjoyed, and he said he would basically sign him up immediately, in a way. So then we kind of see Evie spiraling a little bit with this information, because if he does decide to go, that would mean he's leaving in the summer, which is honestly not that far away. But then she says something that honestly might surprise everyone. She says, and I quote, we could make it work. And that shows a lot of character growth from Evie specifically. I think before she was maybe a realist, and now she's starting to she's still a realist, but she's kind of has a hint of dreamer in her as well from being around X so much. And X is somewhat of the same way. But that's a whole different thing. I think X mainly kind of portrays the traits of a dreamer, but deep down he is a realist a little bit because he knows what can happen, he knows what does happen, he knows how everything works. He's not in denial of it, but they both kind of have the same archetypes in them, and I think that at the same time that's what makes them a good match. This one isn't really an opposites attract because they both already had those archetypes in them. Evie, however, just buried her dreamer archetype down into a ditch and kept her realism self apparent because that's what kept her safe. While X, he wants to say yes to everything. He wants to, live his life to the fullest, live in the moment. And that is more of a dreamer trait archetype, but he does have a little bit of the realist in him, especially when certain things like this happens, or when he's talking about Clay, his old bandmate that passed away. Anyways, the chapter goes on, and they do the dance for the finals, they finish it, and then they kiss at the end. Now, I know what some of you are probably wondering. Why is this a tragic book and why are you reviewing it? This is the main point of reason that I am reviewing this book right now. So she kisses X. She sees the day they met, the meet cute. She sees a couple moments after, and then she sees a little bit into the future. We do see a couple good moments of them, playing guitar or talking, but then we see the core of the tragedy in this one little snippet, and that is Evie laying on her bed crying so hard that her ribs hurt. And then we find out that she's holding a funeral program and it has X's name on it. It has his picture, and we can all insinuate what that means. In a way, this book is a little more complicated than maybe some of the other ones, like Fault in Our Stars, where there's obviously a disruption and a recovery. This is obviously the disruption, but there were a bunch of little kind of bumps in the road throughout this whole book that made her kind of fall back or made her growth kind of come to a halt, reasonably so, but it's not like the strict storyline that I gave you in another video that I will post right up here. Anyways, after that, she runs away. Like, he knows something is wrong. He can see it in her eyes. But she just runs off the stage, away from everything, running away from what she saw as best as she can, but it's kind of hard to run away from a memory that you already saw and you weren't supposed to see. There's this very good line that really caught my eye in chapter 50, and it's where she says the opposite of love isn't hate, it's death. And that'll basically be the core thing in all of these stories, is that none of them hate each other for their decisions, for what they didn't tell them and what happened. It'll just be the grief and the death that causes most of the turmoil in these stories. And then we see that Evie breaks up with X over a text. He's texting her. They won the finals and he's been trying to check on her, but she's not answering. And then when she finally does, she ends it because she feels like that is safer for herself to be able to, I guess, grieve him in advance without him being there. She doesn't want him to be there to miss him more. The rest of the book I can only describe as she is having inner turmoil, but she can't entirely show it to the degree that she wants to, because no one except for Martin understands what she saw and what she's going through. Then she has a moment with her dad after her mom basically made her talk to him. And the thing is here, even though Evie would be reasonably angry, I don't think she's really angry. She's hurt, she's in pain, she's worried, she's confused, and she's tired. So this moment she's having with her dad, she's showing all those emotions that she honestly doesn't show with probably anyone else except for maybe Martin. And it's kind of a moment where I think she starts to learn her dad's point of view in a way. Not that she forgives him yet, but she's kind of starting to understand, and he's explaining and admitting that he made a mistake and telling her how sorry he is. And she's listening, and she hasn't listened to him about this sort of thing for a while. There's a line that Evie's dad says, or it's more like a quote, but he says, "Here was what I think. If you get very, very lucky in this life, then you will get to love another person so hard and so completely that when you lose them, it rips you apart. I think pain is the proof of a life well lived and loved." As multiple songs say and multiple things say, love is the prize. But as Evie's dad said, it's also it's the answer, it's the question, it's the reason to ask the question, it's everything. It's the reason that we live. It's the core of life anywhere. Later there will be a quote from Evie's mom that I think kind of applies to this as well. And I will bring it back up then. But we're going to move on to the next chapter. In chapter 53, I'm just going to read it to you because it's like a paragraph long. It says, "When I imagine X dead, I don't see darkness. In darkness, there is still hope. Some hidden thing in the place where you can't see. Grief to me feels like an endless landscape of white light. No secrets and no surprises either. You can see clearly all you have lost and everything that is no longer there." And I don't know if I've ever seen a better representation of grief in a writing. We've all heard the phrase, "there's light at the end of the tunnel." It's a dark tunnel. And that's what she's referring to, where she doesn't see darkness. And I kind of find it curious that the endless landscape is a white light, because usually we see that as purity, cleanliness, and hope in general, because the light at the end of the tunnel is usually white. But here we see that it's just a white slate of just nothingness, because you can see what's there. In the darkness, you don't know what's going to be there. You can't see maybe the light at the end of the tunnel yet until you walk further, but in white light you can see everything clearly. The next chapter, we see that Cassidy and Sophie break up, just like the Vision had predicted however many months ago. I don't know how long it's been. We see that happens, and Evie seemed, from what I've noticed, I could be wrong, more upset about the Vision that happened than she was here. Almost like she prepared for this moment and waited for it, but she still accepted that she had the time before this to be with them. And I think in a way that she forgot about that learning experience that she learned from X, by the way, with X. She needs to relearn that just because it ends badly, Cassidy and Sophie, for example, doesn't mean that you should give up all the moments that you have before this tragedy or breakup or whatever it may be happens. All right, here comes the moment with her mom. They're making bread pudding because her mom basically forced her downstairs to do it. And Evie's mom wants her to talk to her about what happened between X and Evie. And Evie says, no, I want you to talk to me about Dad and what happened with that. In other words, she wants it to be a two-way street. And then we see her mother finally telling Evie about everything. Basically, her mom says, you're not supposed to be taking care of me. I'm supposed to be taking care of you. I didn't tell you because I was trying to protect your relationship with your father. Because I saw how close you were before all of this. Of course, I was angry. But it's not your job to take care of me, basically. And then the truth gets let out that her dad isn't the one who wanted the divorce. Her dad actually wanted to try to work things out with her mom and go to counseling, but her mom said no. All right. And then Evie asks her about this other guy that Evie's mom has been dating throughout the book, or maybe halfway through the book, actually. And she asks how's her mom so okay with dating again? And her mom explains kind of the same thing that I've been telling you, that love and connection is essential for human life. Can't go on without it. I will continue to enunciate that every video if I have to. And Evie's just confused because look what happened with her dad. Her mom explains that she just can't just cut herself off from love because one thing went bad. Just because this was bad doesn't mean, just because it ended bad doesn't mean the entire relationship was any less real. She says, once upon a time, your father and I loved each other enough to have you and your sister. That alone makes all the other nonsense worth it. Evie insists that she'll be okay by herself, and this is where that one line that I love is said. Evie says, I'll be fine by myself. And her mom says, you ever hear about the one about the fish that didn't need water? And Evie says no, because who has heard of that? And her mom just says, me neither. Now, that line basically means a fish can't live without water, the same as a person can't live without love. We all have it within ourselves somewhere, and it's essential for living. Love and connection, two of basically the same things. One is just more, maybe, I don't want to say extreme, but that's the only word I can find right now, than the other. And then the graduation happens. We find out that Danny is single and Martin wants to ask her out. Evie doesn't knock him down. She actually somewhat encourages it. She's like, okay, if you want to do it, you can do it. And that's another sign of her growth, because earlier in the book, she just doesn't want him to get hurt at all. She doesn't want him to ask her out because she fears that she's going to say no when Martin's going to get hurt. Or if they do get together, then if they break up, in her mind, inevitably, then things will change between all three of them. And she encourages it in a way so much that she actually tells her sister about Martin and how much he's liked her, as she describes, since the dawn of time. And then we see a moment between Evie and Danny after Evie tells her about Martin. But Danny asks her if she thinks that Shirley and her dad got together before their parents separated. And of course, Evie knows the answer, and she could tell her the truth, but instead she lies and tells her dad would never do that. And in a way, that's kind of sweet, because she doesn't want to put her sister through the same thing that she went through and is still going through. She wants to keep that innocent in her relationship with her father alive. And I think this is kind of a moment where she realizes what her mom was trying to do as well, because this is the exact same thing her mom did. Another line that I like in this book, I know there's a lot, Um, but she's talking about X's grandparents. I still think it's grandparents. Um, where she says, "At first, I think they have no idea how lucky they are, but then I study the look on both their faces, a combination of wonder and certainty, and I know I'm wrong. They know exactly how lucky they are." And then she goes back to the place where she got the instructions for dancing book in the first place, and she sees that old woman there again, and she starts asking her why she cursed her with this gift. And the woman explains that it wasn't meant to be a curse. It was meant to show her all the love in the world, and she asked why she focused on the ending in the heartbreak only. And Evie said, because that's what matters the most. And the old woman seems a little confused. And she's like, is that all that matters? Because honestly, it's not. We've seen almost everyone else in this book, except for Evie, try to explain or portray the fact that the happy moments with the person matters. The moments where you're, for Evie's example, playing guitar and dancing at the dance and just being happy together, that's what matters, not however it ends with breakup or with death or with whatever it may be. That's not what matters. It's the middle. It's the beautiful, glorious middle. Even the beginning doesn't matter as much as that part. So then we see the wedding, and there's one moment in here that catches my eye as well. It's the moment at the wedding where the groom and the bride kiss, and Evie decides not to look. And I think that's because she explains that she wants to pretend that they have forever. Even though, most endings at some point might end the same, but again, that's not what matters. And after a while at the reception, she sees Shirley and her dad, and she sees how much they love each other. And he tells Shirley, his now wife, how much he loves her and how he always will. And that's when Evie realizes that all that matters is that he feels it right now. That's it. That's all that matters. And this is basically the chase scene in most romance books after this moment. So she goes to X as quickly as she can, and she tries to make up with him, but it's obvious that she hurt him a lot, and it's been a couple months since they've been broken up, maybe 1, 2, maybe. And she says that she's sorry and that she was scared, and he's confused on why she was scared, because he had constantly assured her that things would be okay between them and that nothing would happen. And even though she does know what will happen, she says she figured out that endings don't matter as much as she thought, and that is very true. So then we're here at the last chapter. He agrees to go to her dad's wedding with her and dance with her, be her dance partner. And again, she, at the beginning of their dance, she's self-conscious, and she realizes that there's so many people watching her and how they're studying her dance moves. But after a while, she just sees X, and that's all she notices. And then 8 months from now, X will pass away. But by then, I really like the way this was written, because it goes to the future where he passes away, but then it goes to all the good, glorious moments in the middle. By then, we'll have written an entire album together. We'll have danced for hours. We'll have made love. He'll have taught me how to play guitar and love music as much as he does. And he'll have told me that he loves me every single day. Then it goes back to kind of the present moment where she says, some days I know that I'll be okay, and other days I'm a mess, basically. But here's the main part where we see how much she's grown, where she says, "One thing I know for sure, love can last forever." That is a big sign from the beginning of the book where she thinks everything ends and nothing lasts forever. Nothing. To now, she knows love can last, and she knows that even when he's gone, they'll still be together in some way. And then there's this line. It's also a metaphor. Now he spins me around. My arm travels down the length of his. Our fingertips brush, and it feels like I'm going to slip away from him. But I don't. And I guarantee you that that's how she felt throughout a lot of the time that they were together. She had no idea when it was going to happen. She knew how. She knew in however many months, but she didn't know the exact date. Throughout this book, we could see her kind of slipping away from love or from him, or even possibly from herself. But then she says she doesn't slip away. And then she does the thing you're supposed to do when you find love, and that's hold on. And that line gets me every time. So I think a lot of us have a little bit of Evie and X in ourselves. We want to say yes to everything. We want to live our lives to the fullest, but the little Evie parts of ourselves are scared and believe that maybe there's no point to doing all this. And some days you will be Evie, and other days you will be X. But I love the whole meaning of this book is that even though things may end, it doesn't mean that they didn't matter. Think of it this way. You rehearse for months and months and months for a musical that you get to put on in front of a large audience. But then comes the day of the final show, the curtains close, the show is over. Does that mean any of that rehearsal, any of that hard work that you put in didn't matter? Does that mean any of the fun or the people that you met didn't matter and that it was pointless? No. It just means that that chapter in your life is closed. You learned from it. Maybe you have memories that'll last you a lifetime, but that doesn't mean that those times didn't matter. Especially when it's doing something you love or it's with someone you love. And that's the core message of this story. I honestly forgot how much I loved this book, and maybe I didn't entirely understand it before, but after rereading it and truly taking it in and all the messages and metaphors and symbolism, you can see that it is a lesson as a whole, and that's what a lot of books and all of these stories are. They have a core message that we can all learn from. Anyways, that was instructions for dancing. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to share this video with anyone who might be interested, and I will see you. I'm hoping to post on Saturday again. I know this one was on a Sunday, but that's okay. But I will see you next Saturday. Remember to stay curious. See you next time.